Hey there, thank you so much for clicking on my video today. This is Laura Lynn with Keep Inking Up. I'm an independent demonstrator for Stampin' Up in San Antonio, Texas. And over the past couple of weeks, I have been having a lot of fun with our Butterfly Brilliance stamp set and the coordinating set of dies. These are the set of dies that are available. Unfortunately, the 6x6 DSP that was offered originally earlier this month as a big bundle is no longer available. It's already been sold out. It's extremely popular. This butterfly set of products has been extremely popular, and that's not surprising. It's a really beautiful stamp. And anyway, you can no longer get the 6x6 DSP, but you can still get the wood grain DSP and the bundle, either or the. You can buy these separately, the stamp set and the set of dies separately, if that is what you would like to do as well. Now, this stamp does come as one large background stamp with the 6 butterflies. I wanted, however, to be able to use the butterflies individually, so I did a little bit of stamp surgery on my stamp, and I know this makes a lot of people very nervous, but I just did straight cuts and cut away my butterflies so that I can very easily piece them back together as a puzzle, and that way I can still stamp all 6 butterflies at one time so that I'm able to use the die that will cut them out all at once as well. So again, that's just something that I did. It's not something that everybody would like to do, but it is something that I did. And I'm going to be using one of these butterflies in 2 of the techniques that I'm going to share with you in this video today. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for a moment. I have already put that separate butterfly into my Stamparatus. My Stamparatus is going to be a key tool on at least, well, both of these techniques. So I already have it mounted here on my Stamparatus, on my plate. And I have a piece of our basic white cardstock that we'll use in a little bit. And then I have a piece of our Fluid 100 watercolor paper. Now for this first technique, it is very important that you use watercolor paper because we are going to be using a lot of water. And if you don't use watercolor paper, use regular basic white cardstock, it'll pill and it won't look very nice in the end. So you do want to use a watercolor paper. So I'm going to slide my piece of watercolor paper. This is actually cut in half from how that arrives to you in the package. And I'm going to actually pick up this plate because I think it'll be easier for me to do the work I want to do. I'm going to take my Highland Heather ink pad and I'm going to ink up the whole image. So I've got all of the whole butterfly covered with the Highland Heather ink. Then I'm going to bring in one of our Stampin' Write markers. If you're not familiar with our Stampin' Write markers, we have 2 tips on each marker. On the one that has the bold stripe here, that is the brush tip, which is what we're going to be using today. On the other side, where it has the thin line, it is a fine tip, which you can do writing with. This is what I use when I sign my cards or address my envelopes. So everything coordinates. But I'm going to be using the brush tip today, and I'm going to add the color to my stamp. So I'm going to put the marker on its side and brush on the darker purple color. And I'm going to go kind of close to the body, and then I'm going to go out on the edge of the wings. Now, it doesn't really matter. You can see I'm just kind of scribbling it on. I'm not being very precise, and you don't need to be. And you'll see why in a little bit. I'm just kind of scribbling on. I just want to get some of that darker color in there somewhere. Okay. And I'm going to keep this off the hinge for the moment, and now I'm going to take some water that I have put in one of our Stampin' Spritzers, and I've labeled it water. And I'm actually going to do this part a little bit off camera because I don't want to spray water everywhere, but I'm going to spray this stamp image with the ink on it several times until you see the water kind of bead up. So I'm going to spray that, and so hopefully you can see how there's quite a bit of water on there. It's beaded up quite well. Now I can put it on my Stamparatus, put the paper in, and stamp that down. Then when I lift up, you'll see all that beautiful water there. Then I'm going to take one of our water painter brushes, make sure it's going with water. Okay, And I'm going to spread that around and just kind of fill in all of the holes. And you can see with the two colors I get kind of a mottled look, which is what I wanted. And I'm just going to kind of spread this around. So like I said, you really need to be using watercolor paper for this. There's quite a bit of water on there. I'm actually going to use my rag here to clean this off. Clean my water painter off so it's ready to go next time. I'll put that in there. Oops, did I get that? Now I'm going to set this watercolor paper aside for it to dry. I'm going to lay it flat, let that dry a little bit. Now I need to go ahead and clean up my stamp for the next technique. We'll finish up that first technique in a little bit, but we need to move on to the next one. So I'm going to clean up the ink with my Stampin' Chamois, and then I'm going to use my rag to try to dry it off, at least most of it. There might be some little bit of water deep down in those grooves. I think that'll be okay. Normally I don't do these techniques back to back, so I don't have to worry about the stamp being wet. We don't want it to be soaking wet. But I'm going to leave it right there. And next I'm going to bring in my piece of basic white cardstock. And now I'm going to ink up my butterfly again with the Memento Tuxedo black ink. Make sure I've got that well inked. Swing it over and stamp that down. On my paper. That looks wonderful. Now if you wanted it to be darker, you have it on the Stamparatus, so you could stamp it again, but I don't believe we need to. And next I'm going to color this in. Let me get some of this out of the way here. I'm going to pull in some of my Stampin' Blends. Now on the watercolor piece, let me pull this back in. You can see it's starting to dry a little bit. I have the Highland Heather and Gorgeous Grape ink on there. But we don't have Gorgeous Grape blends, but we do have Highland Heather and we have Purple Posy. So I'm going to use, let's see, I'm going to use the light Purple Posy, and I think that I'll want to use the dark Highland Heather. We can add the two other colors if we want to later. But I think I'm going to begin with the light Purple Posy, and I'm just going to color over the whole wings of the butterfly. And I'm using the brush tip rather than the bullet tip, because I'm trying to cover a large area pretty quickly. Okay, so I've covered the whole butterfly with the light Purple Posy. So now I'm going to take the dark Highland Heather, and I'm going to use the bullet tip on this one, and I'm going to add some darkness wherever there's dark on the drawing. So I'm just going to kind of go along the edges. You can color it however you'd like. I just kind of like having the dark color. And that looks a little bit of a mess right now, but I'll go back with the light Purple Posy and blend those colors together. And because we used the Memento ink, there's no smearing going on. So you can see how, when we go over with the lighter color, see how much nicer that side looks than this one. It's all nice and blended together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on this side as well. So isn't that lovely? I think it's just a really pretty butterfly. Okay, so I'm going to put these markers aside, and I'm going to get the Stamparatus out of the way, because then we need to pull in our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. I don't know if it's going to fit in here. Let's see. So we can cut out our butterfly. And I didn't get my plates ready, so let me find them. I need my platform, and I need my cutting plate, my platform number 2, my number 3 plate, and I have another cutting plate to go on top. But now I need my my die. So let's see. I need to position this over the paper. I need to line up my butterfly, and then I've got some washi tape so I can attach. Oops. So it won't move. And then we're going to run this through the cut and emboss machine. Sorry that the table is wiggling quite a bit. Okay. Don't have enough room here with my camera. It's a lot easier to do this when you're not trying to film it. But there is my butterfly cutout. Isn't that pretty? So let's get all of this out of the way. I love this emboss machine because I can just fold it up and put it away, even though it's making my table wiggle so much. But there, now it's out of the way. So now we can bring in back in this beautiful butterfly that we colored with the Stampin' Blends. So let's go back to our watercolor piece. It's still not quite dry, so I'm actually going to use my heat tool. If you're not familiar with the heat tool, our Stampin' Up! Heat tool, it has 2 settings, 1 and 2. 1 is for drawing and 2 is for heat embossing. So I'm going to put it on the 1, and we're going to try to dry this butterfly. I want to make sure that this is completely dry before we go on to the next step. I think that looks dry. I think so. Now you could just go ahead and cut that out right like it is. I want to show you a card where I did that. On this particular card, I just did the background. I don't know if you can see that is just the same. It's a different butterfly image, because remember I cut it apart to 6 images. But that's the butterfly with just the watercolor and not the next step on there. So you could just simply take this to your die cut machine and cut it out and add it to a card. Isn't that a pretty card? I love the sparkle. It's that champagne mist, shimmer mist that makes it sparkle. It's so, so pretty. Hopefully you're catching that sparkle on the camera. So I wanted to share that with you. But we're not finished with this particular image. So I'm going to bring back in my Stamparatus, and I'm going to place my watercolor paper back in the corner. And once again, I'm going to use the Memento ink. You could use any ink, but I'm just going to use Memento ink. Ink that up really well. And because this is in the same spot, I'm going to pull this over and that will stamp right on top of the watercolor piece that we did. Press that down. And I think it needs a little bit more black, don't you? Well, the beauty of the Stamparatus is I can do that. So I'm going to ink it up again. Make sure my paper's in the corner. And then I will stamp it again. Maybe I need to add a little more pressure there. I think that looks better. Doesn't that look nice? Okay. So then what you would do is simply take it back to your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, just like we did before. I'm not going to do that since that was so wibbly wobbly, but I wanted you to see the two differences. This one is the Stampin' Blends with the Purple Posy and Highland Heather Stampin' Blend markers, and this one is the watercolor with the Gorgeous Grape and Highland Heather. You don't really see a whole lot of the Gorgeous Grape, but you can add more of that color. I think maybe next time I would do that. So those are two different ways that you can color the butterflies or any outline stamped image. I did want to share a couple of cards that I used with this stamp set. These are two of a different butterfly using the same technique. Let me see if I can tell the difference. This one is the watercolor example. What I did though, after I did the stamping with the Memento, I colored it with the Wink of Stella, and unfortunately the Wink of Stella reacted with the Memento ink, and so it kind of blurred the black a little bit. So next time I probably wouldn't add the Wink of Stella on there. But it's nice and sparkly, and I like the sparkle, but I don't like the way that the Wink of Stella reacted with the ink, so I probably won't do that again. And then I used the 6 butterflies in the background for that. This one is the example of the Stampin' Blends, and you can kind of see the Highland Heather and the Purple Posy blends in that one. Just hope they can see it. And again, I used the Wink of Stella. And this one, because it's alcohol ink on the blends, well, I still used the Memento, but for some reason that one didn't. Maybe because it's watercolor paper, but this one definitely looks more blurred than this one. But anyway, which one do you prefer, the Stampin' Blends version or the watercolor version? I think they're still very pretty, but there's just two different ways of coloring your butterflies. You don't have to always color them. Oh, I wanted to bring this one in again. This one I used the detailed dies and just added it on top of the watercolored background. I did make several other cards with the butterfly bundle, so I thought I would share those with you. If you follow me on social media, you've already seen these cards. This one I used the detailed dies and just added them on a card base, white on white, and then just added a heat embossed sentiment on there. So it's a very simple card. Here's one that uses the beautiful paper that's no longer available, unfortunately, and then I added a sentiment on there, and I added the beveling on the die. If you want to see how to do that, I have a video on how to do that. Added a bit of bling, so that's a really pretty card. This is, I think, is one of my favorites. I had some strips of paper left over. Added a die cut from the bundle, and the thank you sentiment is from the Sweet Ice Cream stamp set. And I like this one too. I stamped in and cut out some butterflies out of Misty Moonlight paper. This is again from the Designer Series paper that is unfortunately no longer available. And then the Just For You image, I believe that is from the Sweet Strawberry stamp set, and it was cut out using dies from the Ornate Frames stamp set. And then here's the last one I want to share. Again, this beautiful paper that's no longer available. And I layered up one of the butterflies cut from the Designer Series paper, added a white detailed die cut on the top, and stamped a simple sentiment from the Tasteful Touches stamp set. So those are several examples using the Butterfly Brilliance stamp set. What did I do with it? I lost it. There it is over there. And some of the coordinating dies that are available as a bundle. And like I said, even though the paper is no longer available, you can still get the bundle or these items individually, as well as the wood grain paper. So thank you again so much for clicking on this video and watching. I hope that you learned something new, and we'll return to more videos that I'll be posting in the future. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.